Welcome to Questions with L.A. Marzulli. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli, also known as Mr. Know-It-All. Not really, but I just used to love that segment on Rocky and Bullwinkle. We'll get to your questions in just a moment, but first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Did you know Noble Gold's team of precious metal experts have helped thousands of worried investors like you to build and preserve wealth through times like these? Find out why gold, silver, and IRAs are the answer to inflation and financial contagion. Folks, I got to tell you, my wife and I invested some money in Noble Gold, and I'm glad we did, especially with what the economy's doing. Talk to a personal precious metal expert today. This month, they're gifting a free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with every qualified IRA above $20,000. Folks, you can't go wrong with Noble Gold. That's why my wifey and I invested with them. Call 877-646-5347 or find out more by visiting noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. There's the link on your screen, 877-646-5347. Give them a call today, folks. So for those of you who remember Rocky and Bullwinkle, there was a segment called Mr. Know-It-All, and it was just, of course, Bullwinkle was Mr. Know-It-All, and it was all tongue-in-cheek and all in good fun, but those were the days of some really great cartoons, and you can still watch them up on YouTube. But I digress as usual. If you've got a question, shoot me an email, questions@lamarzulli.net, questions@lamarzulli.net. I'm trying to do about 10 every week, so it's going to take a while to get caught up, but I will get to it. Contrary to my tongue-in-cheek Mr. Know-It-All, I am not all-knowing, all-seeing like Rush Limbaugh was, all everything. There's only one, and that is the guy upstairs. I think you know who I'm talking about, El Shaddai, God Almighty. But I'll do my best to answer these questions as honestly as I possibly can. Let's get right into it. This is from Kurt. Elliot, I got a question about the size of the giants before the flood. Enoch 7:3 says they were 3,000 cubits in height. So they'd be 4,500 feet if a cubit is 18 inches. That doesn't seem right. Please clarify. Thank you. With translations like that, you're talking from the book of Enoch, which I believe you quote. Yeah, Enoch 7:3. Could be a translation thing. Could be a problem with copying the scribes. We don't know. And it's actually, they call it, it's not cubits, it's L's, and we don't know what an L is. Let's go with what we have. We know that Og, or Og, as Doug Hamp likes to call him, Og is 12, 13 feet tall. We know that. That's in the biblical prophetic narrative. It's written. So we can take that to the bank, that Og's about 12 to 13 feet tall. Let's just go with that. Before the flood, we don't know. There's really no record of it. We only know that they were really big. Okay, I hope that answers your question. So this is from Buzzard. Okay. Have you heard about Project Bluebeam? Yes, of course. It's about a false flag alien invasion in the future during the rapture using holograms for UFOs. Sergei Monas predicted this and was killed by the Canadian government for leaking this information. It's all about plans for world government. Also, have you heard of Cyrus Parsa? So let's back up here. I've never heard of Sergei Monas, or however you pronounce his name, and I'm not sure, you people can write anything. I haven't done enough research into this to really ascertain whether he was taken out by his own government. I find that a little suspicious. But Bluebeam has been around for a while. And in my opinion, it's interesting, but I believe the real thing will happen. Now, at the very end, he says this. Also, have you heard of Cyrus Parsa? He believes that the Nordic aliens will arrive in 2022. Well, we're rapidly closing that window. But here's something to think about, and we've talked about this in our UFO update. The late David Flynn talked about UFOs appearing directly after some sort of a nuclear event on the planet. Okay, so we had the Cold War, and all the nukes get put to bed, no saber rattling after the Bay of Pigs and Khrushchev and Cuba and all that stuff. Things kind of calmed down a little bit, culminating with Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and that's a horrible imitation, LA. But anyway, so that's what it was, and everything was relatively peaceful. Pakistan and India threatened each other with nukes. We know that. Kim Jong-un has saber rattling, of course, when Trump was president. Some of that went away. But here we are in 2022. And what's going on in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe? They're talking about some sort of a nuclear event or responding with tactical nukes. It's unbelievable. So the idea is this. If there's a nuke that goes off anywhere on this planet, in our current time frame that we're in, because of the internet and because of the satellite technology, we are all linked up like never before. In the history of the world, the planet has never been linked like it is today. So if you have a nuke, every single media stream on the planet will be covering that. Satellites will be zooming in. That's all we'll hear about probably for a week, maybe longer. What happens, and this is what the late David Flynn posited, if a nuke goes off, you might see mile-wide craft appear. And that is not Project Bluebeam. That's something entirely different and, of course, incredibly alarming. So I don't have all the answers, and I know about Bluebeam, but I'm leaning towards David Flynn's scenario. Moving right along. This was printed twice. Sorry about that. This is from Alex. Hey, Ellie, I came across your channel a month ago researching a Nephilim, and I love your content. Well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. I pray that success in all aspects come your way. Once again, thank you, sir. I pray that back on you. I know you're a supporter of the Book of Enoch, but I want to know your opinion of the Book of Giants, since it was also found in Qumran, in the Qumran caves, along with the Book of Enoch. Do you believe there's any legitimacy to it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read the Book of Giants years ago. It's interesting. And here's the way I treat all this. Read it and appreciate its historicity. I look at the Book of Enoch not as scripture, although when you read Enoch chapter 6, it mirrors our Genesis 6 account verbatim, except it amplifies certain aspects of it. And it defines who these sons of God were, which of course the angels of heaven, and in this case the fallen angels of heaven. So I would say this: read it, appreciate its historicity, tuck it on the back burner, take that information and plug it in to the Nephilim agenda overall. But it certainly isn't canon, and it's not part of our scripture. But look, just like when we read Josephus, scholars will call Josephus colorful. Well, okay, so maybe Josephus exaggerated, but he's a great source for what happened in AD 70 when Titus came down. He's also a great source talking about the Nephilim, because Josephus writes that up until that time there were giants whose countenance were so fierce and different and terrible to the hearing, different from mortal men, and their voices terrible to the hearing. I mean, Josephus writes this. This was common knowledge in Israel. And then he writes, the bones of these giants are still on display. This, of course, before Titus and Melegians came in and destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70. So the bones of the giants were on display. Just think about that. They were on display. Where? In my opinion, not on the Temple Mount proper, but I believe that the bones of the giants would be displayed on the way to the Temple Mount, so people could see them, and there would be someone probably standing there, maybe a rabbi, who knows who, would be explaining to the people, the pilgrims coming into Jerusalem, this is what our ancestors had to deal with, the bones of the giants. So all that, of course, is swept away. But while Josephus might be colorful, we get an insight into what the giants were really about. Thanks so much for writing in, Alex, and thank you again for the kind words. This is from Stefan. Is Ron Wyatt a hack, fraud, or fake? Or do you think he really found Noah's Ark, Red Sea crossing, Sodom and Gomorrah? There are many conflicting sources. I would like to know what you think with your broad scope of experience and context. Ron Wyatt was a very colorful individual. There's no doubt about it. I have trouble with some of what he said, specifically with the Ark of the Covenant. Bring back something. Bring back something. I mean, anybody can say anything. And it's interesting, allegedly, where he found this is in the place of a skull, which you can't go to anymore. And we talked about this on Tuesday on the Trail of the Nephilim, that some people are positing the place of a skull right next to the Garden Tomb in Jerusalem, the place where Goliath's skull was buried, Golgotha, Goliath from Gath. Etymology of the word, is it a stretch? I don't know. But all that's sealed off. The Arabs control it. Ron, I never met the man. I don't know. I've looked at some of the videos. I think he's a little bit hyperbole there. But here's the deal. Apparently on his deathbed, he never retracted anything. So I wasn't with him, and I don't know. I know his son is still alive. Maybe we could reach out and ask him. But, I don't speak ill of anyone else's research. I know of Ron Wyatt's work. I find it a little curious that there's no hardcore artifacts showing the Ark of the Covenant's discovery. I mean, there is some video with the cave and all this stuff, and he sent the guy in. I know the story, but you have to have hard evidence. Like, for instance, with our Paraka skulls, we had the scientific method. We took the skulls, we took measurements, we looked at the foramen magnum. We realized something genetic was happening. We did DNA testing, and you can examine our evidence and decide for yourself whether we're telling the truth or whether it's a lot of hyperbole. Science doesn't lie. When we take a DNA sample, we put it into that sequencer, it's going to tell us exactly what haplogroup the origins of that sample comes from. End of story. So what we discovered was many of these entities came from the Middle East and Eastern Europe. That rewrites history. But the academics and the scientific community really aren't interested in rewriting history. They'll just go with the status quo. So all of our work is just dismissed. Oh, it's all contaminated. No, it's not. No, it's not. But we're on the trail. But you can rent our shameless plug. You can rent our DNA video, streaming.eliamarzulli.net, rent number 6 DNA. And I mean, that's hardcore scientific evidence, which you could throw up the flagpole for peer review. Not that anyone would even review it, but because they're afraid of being associated with us. And I'm not making that up. So let's move along. This is from Ronald. Hey, I just finished Dr. Jacobs' book again. Read it several years ago. My question, why would the alien hybrids allow Jacobs to conduct his work? Okay, let's start with that one. Jacobs is not talking to hybrids per se. He's talking to the abductees who handle the hybrids. To the best of my knowledge, no one has ever sat down with a so-called hubrid or hybrid. Jacobs calls him a hubrid. And sat there and what's it like? Where are you from? What's going on? No one's ever done that, to the best of my knowledge, including Jacobs. But what is interesting is this is one of the best kept secrets in all of history, that no one really knows how all this works. That's why our 4th film in the ongoing UFO series is on abduction. And we talked to 4 people who had been abducted. And this, to your point, the women, especially Karen, had 3 children by them. So she has 3 hybrid children. Al Matthews had an encounter with a hybrid woman. So it goes on and on and on. And it's a little secret. It's the dragon's most precious secret. And he's not letting that out. He's not letting that out. Your second part, of all the hypnotic regressions and abductees Jacobs had done, why hasn't he ever even once interviewed at least one hybrid as proof? Because they're not going to sit down and consult to an interview. Now, there was a woman, her name is Marina. I actually interviewed her. It's in my queue. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. She claims to be a star child. And when you go online and you look her up, her eyes are really big, but when you see her in person, she looks completely normal and human. And in talking with her, she's very much New Age, and has an answer for everything. Is she a hybrid? No, I don't think she is. Is she a star child? Perhaps. I do know this. She has been abducted numerous times and has had contact with them. This is from Don. Hey, LA, great work you're doing. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Most of your guests on supernatural encounters ring true to me. There have been a few that I think to myself, not so sure about this person. Do you have a vetting process, or do you just go off on your instincts and discernment? I basically go off my instincts. Our producer, John Adam Hitz, will interview them via email, find out what they want to talk about, but the day of the interview is the day of the interview. If I do an interview and I think this is off the rail, I just won't publish it, that's all. So that's why I've done a couple like that, and I haven't gone with them yet. And I may never publish them or allow them to go on Supernatural Confrontations because they just didn't ring true to me. So that's the way I do that. And yeah, shoot me one of your songs, Don, and I'll check it out. Thank you, sir. This is from Robert. L.A., why does God allow hybrids to interact with humans, or does he? Or is the interaction somehow allowed, encouraged, or invited by the human, possibly past unrepentant sin? That's a great question, Robert. We know when you read in the book of Genesis with Abraham, and the pre-incarnate Christ arrives at Abraham's tent, and there are two angels with him. He sends the angels out, and then Abraham begins this bartering system with Jesus. That's who it is, in my opinion. It's the pre-incarnate Christ. And the Lord tells him this, that, you're gonna become a great nation, but you're gonna go down to Egypt for 400 years until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness. What does that mean? It's one of the most troubling verses in all of the guidebook of the supernatural, i.e. our Bibles, because something is going on. Something is happening there. And it's a 400-year window. That's how patient he is, until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness. And then, of course, the children of Israel leave Egypt and go into the promised land. They won't go up against the giants, the Nephilim tribes that are there. That's why that generation dies off 40 years. And then the new generation goes in with Joshua and Caleb at the helm leading the charge. I mean, remember, the Nephilim tribes that are there, they are soulless. They are not human. They are hybrids. So why does God allow this? Because this is the protocol that goes back to Genesis 3:15. I say this almost daily now on almost every show, that unless we understand the implications of Genesis 3:15, we don't really fully grasp the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. Genesis 3:15, and hats off to Gary Stearman, who lectured on this in our Nephilim Mounds conference years ago. Your seed, looking at the dragon, Satan, your seed, your offspring will be at enmity, at war with the offspring, the seed of the woman. He, the proto-evangelium, first prophecy of Jesus, Jesus will come and crush your head. That happened on Calvary. You will bruise his heel. That's the whole deal. So the protocols, we don't understand all of them. In other words, what they can and cannot do. They just can't do whatever they want. The protocols of this thing are set in stone, and either side can't break them, to the best of my knowledge. But why is it that when Daniel prays, it takes the angel 21 days to get there? Why does Abraham and the children of Abraham go down to Egypt for 400 years until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness, and then God can act? So there are certain protocols, Robert, that we're just not privy to. We just don't understand. But God always deals with it in the end, just like the children of Israel taking the promised land. They wipe out those Nephilim tribes, the Zanzumim, the Anakim, the Emims, okay? In 2003, my 5-year-old son and I had an encounter with something. I have only vague memories of it. In fact, I didn't have any memories until my son asked about it when he was about 22 years old. I then remembered the very beginning of the encounter, but nothing more. My son seemed to have a better grasp of at least the time frame involved. What do you think about undergoing hypnosis to try to remember? As a Christian, I have serious reservations. Any advice would be appreciated. This is from Yuri. Yuri, stage hypnosis is one thing, I get that. But regression is something completely different. You're always in control, and you're basically led into your subconscious, which is really all it is. You're led by a qualified hypnotherapist, like someone like Yvonne, who did ours in Watchers, and more recently with Angela. And Angela was in complete control the whole time. She's not out of her body, or something comes in, or opening herself up to the demonic. She's just in a very relaxed state with her eyes closed. And I've experienced this in generational stuff, just in relaxing and praying to the Lord to show me what was happening in my generational line. And up comes some things, and you just go, oh my gosh, where's that from? So I would do this, Yuri. I would relax yourself in a time of prayer, maybe fast for one day, and go to the Lord and say, Father, can you show me? And just sit still in front of him and see what he shows. But I would try to find if the Lord doesn't show you something, and you want to go to the next step, you want a qualified hypnotherapist. And get some information. And you can also, if you're in the LA area, I can recommend someone, Yvonne. She's amazing. This is from Marvin. Could it be that spiritual entities are some form of energy? If so, then energy can interact with physical objects. Well, we know. Let's go back to the scenario when the three angels appear to Abraham. One of them, of course, is the pre-incarnate Jesus, the pre-incarnate Christ, the Messiah. The other two go to Sodom and Gomorrah. They sit down and eat with Abraham. So they can appear as an angel of light. The enemy, the dragon, can appear as an angel of light. But what is their true form? Paul says that some of us have entertained angels unawares. So the Greek word that my good battle buddy and friend, who is no longer with us, Russ Dizdar, taught me, metaskismonosai, the idea that they can change their form at will. So what is their true form? I don't know. We don't know. The cherubim are apparently very, very intense. Watcher angels, same. There's all sorts of hierarchy and ranks of them. But they can shapeshift. They can appear as whatever they want to. Hope that helps. This is from Virginia. Just finished Redfern's book after reading Doug Woodward's book. Have you considered the thinking by some of the Collins elite who left the group about the plan in place that counteracts Project Bluebeam? The supposed plan was by various groups of the U.S. military and government and others that plan to have a disclosure that will be a giant projection of Jesus in the clouds to mimic his second coming and bring a moral awareness to the public in order to gain converts to counteract the evil forces of fallen angels that are posing as ETs. Your thoughts? I'm aware of the Collins elite. I do find it interesting. I need more than one source on that. And the best of my ability, when Redfern sits down with this one source, there's only one source. You got to have two sources or three sources. You need at least two, right? And so I look at the Collins elite. I should go back and read Redfern's book again and get, more familiar with it. It's been a while since I've read it. I've always looked at that sort of skeptically because they are real. There are mile-wide craft. And circling back to what we talked about with the late David Flynn, if they want to show up, they're just going to show up. So moving right along. Victor. LA, blessings from Sydney. Quick question. Have you come across any Nephilim sites evidence here in Australia in your research? Yes. I'm more than happy to follow it up for you on your behalf. I'm in Sydney. I'm doing my own research, especially with Aboriginal cultures pre-flood for sure. That's from Victor. Well, Victor, the bottom line for me is this. There are sites, some sites in Australia. The idea of red hair in Australia is certainly bizarre. Something happened. There might have been a migration 3,500 years ago when Joshua and Caleb pushed the conquest of Canaan. They could have gone out the back door and across the Pacific. And that's frankly what I think happened. Part of the Nephilim tribes went westward, and there's a western migration into Cyprus, into Gozo, into Malta, into Sicily, into parts of Italy, and then Minorca, into Spain, up through Spain into Portugal, finally culminating up in England, up in the UK, where we filmed in 2019. So there are sites there. The red hair thing is certainly interesting. There are some interesting megalithic sites there. So yeah, there are. I've never been to Australia. There's plenty enough right here in America that I'm still wanting to get to and film at. So last story today. Stories of three kings sleeping in South America. Have you investigated any of these stories? Are they in deep tunnel systems or pyramid? From the rumors, what are your thoughts? Well, anybody can say anything on the internet. Somebody's got to show me something. There's got to be some sort of evidence. I will say this, that years ago in the Gold Museum, there were on display two mummies on golden thrones that were roughly 9 feet tall. I have talked to Wakaros in around the Paracas area who said 30, 40 years ago when they were much younger, they came upon burial chambers where there were giants in them. But they know they couldn't take us to them, and they believe they were excavated or taken away. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and that's why we try to vet it. That's why I'm pointing you to our On the Trail of a Nephilim series, because we actually go to these places, we do our own investigation, It's a lot of it is like, for instance, with the octagon mound. This is number 2, Mathematical Mysteries of the Mound Builders. That octagon encompasses 50 acres of land in Ohio, but it's an unequal octagon. 2 of the sides are longer than the other 6. You're looking at advanced geometry. Native Americans didn't have that. Surely, if Native Americans had geometry, it would have been handed down. They don't even know who the builders really are. They make up names: Hopewell, Adena, the Woodland period. They just make all these names up. And then they tell us that Native Americans did all this. Not so fast, citizen, I'm not buying it. And they said that modern day archaeologists will insist that these Native American tribes are assimilated to other tribes. But when you go and you ask the modern day tribes in the area, and by the way, there is no federally recognized tribe in Ohio. Think about that. When you ask them, was there any assimilation from other tribes into your tribe? They'll go, no, it's not there. Where is the knowledge of geometry? It's not there. Where is the knowledge of the 18.5-year Metonic cycle, which the octagon mound portrays? And we're going to go there in 2025, God willing, and we're going to film that. And we'll be interviewing all sorts of people about the lunar standstill, which will be happening in Ohio in 2025. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate your patronage. And we'll be back tomorrow with a very special Supernatural Confrontations. I think you'll find it very interesting. It's about a woman who was abducted and had an encounter with a hybrid entity. You won't want to miss this. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, if you've got questions at lamarzulli.net. We'll see you here tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Something very dark and disturbing is happening. It is a global phenomenon that knows no boundaries. It adheres to no cultural mores, and the ones who are engaged in this nefarious activity are beyond reproach. People are being taken against their will. In the cover of darkness, in the dead of night, they are subjected to bizarre examinations that are often sexual in nature. These people are terrified, violated, confused, and with no place to turn to, as who would believe them? This is their story.
No heartbeat. Ultrasound, no baby. DNC, no fetal tissue. There's nothing. It was clean. He's like, ma'am, are you sure you were pregnant? I'm like, this is my doctor. You can call her. I was pregnant. He's like, you didn't bleed all night. You don't have, nothing came. I'm like, no, nothing came out of me.